You come home after a long day. You're eager, because today you know there's a package waiting in your mailbox. There's much excitement. That CD you've been wanting for a while is about to be added to your collection. Once the package is open, you feel like you're unwrapping a Christmas present, with all the bubble wrap, tape, and whatever else the CD was protected with being unraveled. At last, the Misfits Static Age. Time to play that sucker. Huh? No disc? Buying music can be rewarding, but it can also be frustrating beyond belief. It's a test to your limits as a music fan. As the obstacles to buying music are listed, hardcore music fanatics that buy music will have to take their blood pressure medication because they know the anger firsthand. Alright, the first obstacle you face can often be just finding the album. With underground music, trying to find stuff that's been out of print for a while isn't always easy, especially bootlegs and unofficial releases. And if you do find what you're looking for, it probably won't be cheap. You'd be lucky if there aren't cracks in the disc if it's being sold at a much lower than usual price. Other times, you're just trying to find a specific pressing of the album. It'll take a bit of scrolling to find that original pressing of that CD you want. Those who care about the sound quality of their music have to go out of their way and research what the best version of any album is. Unfortunately, it can't be an easy one-size-fits-all scenario where every version sounds great and sounds the same. Sometimes you get cases like Judas Priest and Black Sabbath, where the records and CDs sound totally different depending on what country they were made in. So instead of going the cheap and easy find option of getting the remastered to death copy of Screaming for Vengeance, you could look harder and spend more on an original American or Japanese pressing. Let's talk about remastered albums. Because of limited technology of the times, there are cases where bands can't always reach the sound and vision of what their album should be. So if you transfer decades-old albums on newer machines and tweak them, it can really make the tones pop and help achieve what was originally sought after. It's a fantastic idea on paper, and it's also a chance to correct any pressing errors of the original album. When remasters and remixes are done right, you get stuff like the Downward Spiral Deluxe Edition. The overall volume is louder than the original, but not in an overbearing way, and it leaves plenty of dynamics intact. Everything has been remixed. There's a great amount of clarity and instrument separation. This is actually a super audio CD that does 5.1 surround sound, and it sounds absolutely smoking. However, remastering jobs are usually hit and miss. Going back to Judas Priest's Screaming for Vengeance, we have a case of not only hard dynamic compression and limiting, but also audible noise removal artifacting. The whole thing sounds harsh. So the volume is lower on the original CD? Just turn it up and it still sounds more natural. A lot of remastered albums are victims of the loudness war, or they'll have odd EQ choices and unnecessary remixing. But that's not as offensive as it is when things are re-recorded and parts of the songs are added on and taken away. Compression and limiting can work when used sparingly and carefully, but a stupidly compressed album will just give you ear fatigue. This tracks box, we have Revolting Cock's Big Sexy Land. It sounds extremely harsh and noisy compared to the 1986 disc. It's hell on the ears. When there isn't dynamic compression, there's albums that have songs removed, lyrics censored, or samples removed from songs because of copyright issues. If you know about an obscure copy with the missing samples, you're going to go out of your way to try to find the disc with the samples, right? Alright, so now you gotta look up which pressings to find and which pressings to avoid. After educating yourself, you go to eBay. There's a big CD seller that may have that copy you want. You send them an email asking if the CD has that magical matrix number, catalog number, or a certain label's logo on the back. Then you get an automated response. Due to the high volume of emails we receive, we cannot answer specific questions about the item. What? If they just took 2 minutes out of their busy schedules to tell me if it's the CD that I want, then I'll gladly pull out my wallet and pay them for it. The best part is when the automated response says, you have to go by what's in the product description. Well, maybe the product description didn't say anything important about the album, so that's the whole point of me typing a message. Then when you buy and pay for the album, you still have to be careful. Sometimes you can buy an album and then get an email later saying the album is out of stock and they forgot to take the listing down. Not the worst thing ever, but sometimes disappointing. Looking at feedback scores of online sellers is important to find out if they're scam artists or if they sell garbage quality stuff. First of all, be sure whatever service you're using to pay for your music, or anything for that matter, offers buyer protection. The other person might complain about having to pay service fees, but if they insist on you paying them with the friends and family option, don't communicate any further. Seriously, some of the fees are small enough that if someone really wants to get rid of their $50 album, they won't lose sleep missing a whole dollar. Some websites charge more than that, but that's beside the point. Then you gotta deal with flippers. Yeah, they'll go buy some limited edition copy somewhere for $20 and try to sell it for $100 the same day. A lot of people fall for that. Don't be one of them. Just wait a while. There will probably be more available somewhere for what it actually costs. With the scamming out of the way, you get the numbskulls that overgrade what they're selling. A lot of people are horrible at taking care of their discs, so sometimes you'll have to rifle through a bunch of trashed copies before you can get to the one that says near mint. Too many times have I bought a CD that was labeled near mint, and it came with a scratch. You gotta ask for pictures. Assuming, of course, you won't get the stupid automated response saying to rely on the description. This happens too often, because opinions on how to grade the condition differ. Okay, mint means it's brand new. Near mint means it's used, but there should be no marks on it. Very good means there's a couple mile marks, no big deal. Good means that there are some scratches, but not to the point of crying. And poor means that you're buying it to set it on fire. I mean, what else would it be good for? Bottom line, you pay extra money for a copy that claims to be in better condition than the rest of what's out there, and once it arrives, you think, wow, I should have just bought that poor copy that was $7 cheaper and got the same crappy condition. Some CDs you're just not going to find brand new in most stores, so there's nothing wrong with buying used stuff as long as it's in good enough condition. You also get the occasional inconsiderate seller who won't tell you when the album is shipped. If it's someone who sells a ridiculous amount of music every day, they may not have time to type up tracking numbers for every single order. So they'll only give you the tracking number if it's been a while and you're wondering if the music got lost in the mail. Nothing horribly wrong with that, but it's a minor annoyance. I'd rather just initially have a tracking number if there is one. The biggest can of worms is when the album is being shipped. So much to unpack here. First, records need to be packed with the record outside the sleeve to prevent seam splits in case the album shifts around. Ask the seller to do this. If they ignore the request and the album shows up with a split because of it, I always send it back and demand a refund. It sends the message to give me what I pay for. International shipping is expensive, and most of the time you have to fill out paperwork for it, so it's not as simple as slapping a shipping label on the box and mailing it. But be sure that the package can be tracked if going international. That way it won't get lost in the mail as easily. Postal services in some countries are better than others, but even well-oiled machines can malfunction sometimes. I've already mentioned albums getting lost in the mail, but then you run into the packages sometimes being thrown around, dropped, or being crushed by other packages while at the post office or in transit. Yeah, disgruntled postal workers are a thing you have to worry about. This is why you have to pack your stuff really well. You can't send anything out in a tight-fit box. If the box is larger than needed, you have to use your judgment and make sure it's padded extremely well so that nothing shifts around too much. Bubble wrap is sometimes necessary to protect the corners of records. It would also be better for CDs so that the cases don't crack while being thrown around by the post office. You know what else I hate? When the center holders of CD cases are busted and the pieces fall everywhere. Sometimes it helps to put bubble wrap in front of them. Once the album arrives, it can be a triumph or a defeat. First, you have to examine whether it's damaged at all from shipment. Then you need to flip the disc over and make sure it's in the condition as described when you bought it. Human error sometimes comes into play here. The seller might accidentally put the wrong disc in there. Or unbeknownst to them, the pressing plant forgot to put the second record in that 2 LP set. Yep, that's happened before. Yet another reason to unpack the records, to make sure it has everything it's supposed to have. The ultimate test to good customer service happens when you try to return or exchange the music. You probably got a different record color variant than what you ordered, or there was a mistake, or the album came trashed. Sometimes it's way more difficult to return something than it should be. There are sellers who won't reimburse you on the shipping costs. Or they'll send you a copy with a seam split and insist on their policy of not removing the records. Have I mentioned that it's important to remove the records from the sleeves already? I personally ordered a brand new picture disc that had a skip in one of the songs, and the seller was reluctant to take my return. According to them, it was common that picture discs have loud pops, marks, and scratches, even when brand new. What a schmuck. Some audiophiles and collectors find some of this fun. Doing the research, listening to different versions of the same album to notice the little differences in sound. It can be like a scavenger hunt. But for some listeners, the hoops to jump through can be too much. Some people just don't care, or they don't know better. To someone who's listening to the 2004 remaster of Countdown to Extinction, they probably think it sounds awesome, and they're content. That old saying, ignorance is bliss? This is definitely a case of that. They're not too worried as long as what they're listening to satisfies them. Then there are plenty of people who are okay with listening to terribly compressed music, killing the life of the songs. A lot of them are also okay with just streaming the music instead of hunting down CDs and owning collections. In a way, I envy them. They have little to worry about. You might hear them say, but the 2004 remaster sounds good to me. Once you show them the unaltered superior original copy, all you can do is hope that they agree and find one for themselves. But when you find that special copy, the order goes right and it arrives quickly, nothing beats knowing the music is yours. It could have been by total accident, or you could have done a lot of headache-inducing work, but in the end, maybe it was all worth it.